The cafe was buzzing with the jazz melodies floating through the air, but Amelia's attention was focused on the man sitting 2 tables away. He wore a suit that looked a size too big, and his shoes, well, they were a mismatched pair, one black and one brown. It was the kind of sight that made her roll her eyes without thinking. Amelia had always prided herself on her eye for detail, a gift she was convinced would push her fashion startup to the top. She was sitting there, sipping on her vanilla latte, her own chic heels glistening beneath the table. She glanced at the man again. His hair was tousled, and he was scribbling notes in a worn-out leather notebook as if it held the secret to the universe. "Focus, Amelia," she whispered to herself, shaking the thoughts away. Today was important. She had an important pitch to make, and every detail mattered. Her vision was clear, but she needed the right investment to turn that vision into reality, the right investor. A woman with a sleek, tailored suit approached the man. Amelia recognized her from the business list she had memorized for this meeting. Sarah Kingston. She was known for her fierce deals and keen eye for talent. Amelia couldn't help but wonder what the man had that caught her attention. As Sarah leaned over the table to look at the man's notebook, Amelia's heart raced. If he was an up-and-comer with a brilliant idea, what if he received the investment she so desperately wanted? Her breath caught in her throat. Thoughts spiraled in her mind. Maybe that's why he wouldn't bother with nice shoes, because he was busy changing the world. After a moment, Sarah stood straight and smiled. "I'd love to hear more about your project," she said. The man grinned back, his eyes lighting up in a way that made Amelia's heart drop. What was it about him? "Well, I'll be here soaking up my coffee." "I can't believe that guy gets a meeting with Sarah," she muttered. And yet, disbelief tainted with curiosity made her ears prick. She tried to refocus on her own pitch, which was written on her laptop. Her startup aimed to connect people through a unique online platform for fashion, but she couldn't shake off that feeling of intrigue about the man. Sarah's laughter, bright and clear, echoed through her thoughts. It felt like daggers, each one drawing her attention back to that table. Amelia's fingers danced anxiously across the keyboard. 5 minutes passed, and Amelia had finally had enough. With a deep breath, she glanced in the man's direction again. Perhaps it was time to stop judging. After all, she hated when people dismissed her ideas based on appearances. She stood up, and suddenly her confidence ebbed at the idea of approaching them. What if he noticed her shoes? What if he laughed? But taking a moment, she squared her shoulders, adjusted her blouse, and decided to take the plunge. "Excuse me," she interrupted. They looked up, and she felt all eyes on her, hearts and minds tired of the ordinary. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation." "Not quite," the man replied, "just discussing ideas." "How exciting," Amelia said, forcing a smile while her stomach twisted in knots. "I can offer you some great advice on how to pitch to investors." He blinked slowly, perhaps unsure whether she was being genuine or was simply another person who judged him by appearances. Sarah said, shifting her gaze to Amelia with interest, "We love fresh perspectives." "Amelia," she replied, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "Sarah Kingston, this is my colleague Matt," she introduced, gesturing toward the man who smiled awkwardly. "Pleasure to meet you," Amelia said, forcing another smile. She couldn't ignore the glint in Sarah's eyes, the type that Anne imagined could spot diamonds in a mound of gravel. Sarah asked. Amelia nodded, but her thoughts darted to that notebook again. "Yeah, I am," Matt asked, suddenly interested. She exclaimed, "There's a gap in the market for personalized styling advice combined with social interaction." "Interesting concept," Sarah replied, leaning forward, studying Amelia closely. Amelia said, her heart racing. Matt was scribbling something down in his notebook, his brow furrowed. "Amelia," Sarah said, "it seems you really believe in your project." No one had asked that before. The words spilled out of Amelia as if a dam had opened. She explained her strategies, her marketing plans, and the research she had conducted. Matt nodded, still writing, but that shoe dilemma lingered in her mind. Did it even matter that his shoes were mismatched? "Look," she said, acknowledging Matt, "I know you're probably thinking I'm wasting your time talking about this while judging shoes and ties, but ideas matter, not appearance." The moment her words hung in the air, Matt's expression changed. He looked thoughtful, almost surprised. "It's easy to judge from the outside," he said, tapping his pen against the leather notebook. "I've learned that the hard way." Sarah glanced between the two, her interest peaking at the tension building. "That's the thing, though. Investors are trained to look beyond the surface. We're not just funding." "Exactly," Amelia nodded, her eyes locked onto Matt. He smiled, finally allowing the tension to ease. The corners of his mouth twitched, and Amelia felt her heart warm. Perhaps that awkwardness was not what she assumed. Perhaps Matt had a story too. She asked, her voice curious, genuine. Matt straightened in his chair, a new determination sparkling in his eyes. "I'm creating a platform that connects artists with local businesses. It's about giving a stage to talent that often gets overlooked. Art is more than what you see, it's about community." Amelia's heartbeat quickened again. They were treading the same path, though miles apart. Creative energy buzzed in the air, and suddenly the mismatched shoes didn't matter. What mattered was the passion simmering beneath their surfaces. "Wow," Amelia breathed, realizing she had forgotten her nerves. "That's brilliant, you're right. Art is often dismissed until it's in a gallery or widely known." "Exactly," he said, his confidence growing. He shrugged, looking down at his shoes for just a moment. That's where you're wrong, Amelia declared. It's not about the polish. You're appealing to the rawness, the raw talent in people and communities. Matt looked at her, something shifting between them. In that cafe, with jazz still floating around them, things changed. The air felt electric. Sarah leaned back, happy to watch as the two ignited ideas off one another. Amelia shared her own plans, and for minutes they merged ideas. She forgot about her pitch, lost in discovering what daring, brilliant possibilities might merge if they worked together. For Amelia, it went from judgment to understanding. In the company of mismatched shoes and shared dreams, their ideas began to weave, forming a fabric of innovation. Matt's shoes no longer felt out of place. They felt like a badge of honor, a testament to the journey he had undertaken. And as the jazz band played a lively tune, laughter erupted around the table. And then the smiles spread across all their faces. There was something beautiful about being unassuming. Amelia realized, something liberating. She had been lost in judgment, but now there stood not just a friend, but a partner who understood the essence of passion entirely. Hours passed, ideas flowed, and that cafe became more than just a backdrop. It was where minds collided, where creativity ignited, and where Amelia learned the power of connection. Sometimes the most profound moments happened when you least expected them. A simple eye roll had turned into a journey of collaboration, an unexpected path toward dreams coming to life. And as they left the cafe together, each wearing their own story like a badge of honor, Amelia learned a truth. It was the heart behind the shoes that mattered most, the compassion behind the vision. With that thought, Amelia's mind blazed with ideas, but more importantly, she felt the warmth of camaraderie, the joy of two unlikely partners ready to change the world together. The meeting was set to begin in 15 minutes, and the cafe was already buzzing with tension. Amelia's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her laptop bag. She scanned the hustle and bustle, then her gaze landed on him, the man in the corner, hunched over a notebook that looked like it had survived a war. Her eyes narrowed as she took in his attire, a wrinkled shirt, an oversized blazer, and worst of all, mismatched shoes, one black, one brown. Amelia rolled her eyes, her patience thinning. She whispered to herself, feeling a wave of judgment wash over her. She adjusted her blazer, a sharp contrast to his unkempt look. She had spent days preparing for this pitch, and the last thing she needed was to be overshadowed by someone who seemed to have rolled off the street. As she sipped her vanilla latte, she tried to focus on her own plans. Her startup was not just a dream. It was a mission to disrupt the fashion industry, an online platform that allowed users to receive personalized styling advice combined with community interaction. But all she could think about was how a guy like him could even think he had a shot at real investment. The door swung open, drawing her attention away from the corner, and walked Sarah Kingston, the most sought-after investor in the room. Dressed in a tailored suit that spoke power and sophistication, she scanned the cafe with an air of authority. Amelia's heart began to race. This was her shot, and yet Amelia couldn't shake her eyes from the man in the corner. Sarah approached him, her interest piqued. They exchanged words, and Amelia could see Sarah lean in, genuinely engaged. Sarah asked, her voice carrying over the cafe chatter. The man hesitated, but then a spark ignited in his eyes. "I'm creating a platform for local artists to connect with community spaces," he said, his voice steady, despite the worn leather of his notebook and the mismatched shoes. She watched as Sarah nodded, taking notes, a smile playing across her lips. Was he really impressing her? Amelia's stomach twisted. She had to intervene. She couldn't let this slip through her fingers. Taking a deep breath, Amelia stood, her confidence riding a fine line between courage and desperation. She approached their table, her usual charm flaring up to mask her nerves. "Excuse me," she said, drawing their attention. "I couldn't help but overhear your idea." Sarah turned, her curiosity sharper now. "Yes," Amelia forced a smile, willing the doubt to fade. Matt, the man in the worn clothes, looked surprised but not displeased. "Absolutely." Amelia caught a glimmer of something in his eyes, and suddenly her judgment felt heavy. She had spent all morning worrying about her own looks and presentation, yet here was a man showing real authenticity, so she pushed forward. "In today's market, people crave authenticity. Maybe we can find a way to work together," she suggested, surprising herself with her own boldness. Matt's eyes narrowed slightly, curiosity replacing his apprehension. "Why don't you share what you need in a pitch?" The words tumbled out before she could second-guess herself. "Interesting," Sarah said, leaning back in her chair, watching the exchange unfold with deep interest. Matt leaned forward, his confidence awakening. As they plotted ideas back and forth, Amelia felt locked into a strange rhythm with him. What started as skepticism melted away, replaced by discovery. She learned more about his goal and vision, how he had always been overshadowed in academic settings, yet had a brilliant mind buzzing with ideas. "Art isn't just aesthetics, it's a movement," he said, his voice gaining strength. "People need to feel connected to own their space." The fire in his eyes was infectious, and slowly, Amelia's own vision expanded. She could see how their ideas could intersect. Just then, she caught a glimpse of Sarah taking notes with keen interest. The energy in the cafe was electric, like a storm gathering before a downpour. Okay, let's get into the details, she said, her spirits lifting. The small talk turned into brainstorming, and soon they were bouncing concepts off one another. But just as Amelia began to truly believe in their collaboration, the conversation took a turn that sent a chill through her. She suggested. Matt nodded, a smile creeping in. Or social media campaigns focused on local experiences, he added. Suddenly the energy shifted. Sarah's expression transformed from curiosity to excitement. I think you both are onto something big, she said. Waiting for the punchline, Amelia felt her pulse quicken. I mean, it has potential but needs structure, Sarah replied. Matt's face fell slightly, but Amelia wouldn't let it. We can do it, she declared, her voice steady now. If we work together, I can help refine our approach. His gaze met hers, and there was an unspoken agreement flowing between them. They were more than two random people sharing a table. They were a team bound by purpose. As the clock ticked down, Sarah began to prepare them for the upcoming pitch. I want you both to come prepared with solid metrics, user growth projections, and a clear mission statement, she instructed. The energy shifted yet again, moving from soaring creative ideas to grounded reality. Amelia felt the weight of expectation settle on her shoulders, but she wouldn't back down, not now. Let's meet tomorrow to go over everything, she said, her voice resolute. Matt smiled at her tenacity. Sounds like a plan, he replied. Tension hung in the air as they put together a game plan, their minds colliding in a beautiful dance of creativity and structure. They scribbled notes, ideas materializing on scraps of paper, a vision taking shape. And just like that, Amelia was no longer worried about the guy's mismatched shoes. They had become a symbol of authenticity for her. She understood now that sometimes the most brilliant ideas came from the places least expected. As they wrapped up and Sarah stood to leave, she glanced at both of them with a wicked smile. I want to see what you've got. And with that, she slipped out the door, leaving a swirl of hope and determination behind. Matt asked, incredulous. That was us taking the first step, Amelia said, with newfound excitement. They could do this. They were about to embark on a journey that would change everything. After exchanging addresses and promising to follow up, they parted ways, minds spinning with ideas and possibilities. As Amelia stepped out of the cafe, she took a deep breath of the crisp air filled with promise. The sky painted hues of orange and pink, reminding her that this was just the beginning. But on the corner of her mind was that one thought, almost bittersweet. Why did she ever doubt him? Those shoes, they didn't define him, his passion did. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly, crafting their presentation with a mix of grit and determination. There were moments of doubt, late-night caffeine runs, and bursts of creative genius that felt nothing short of magic. Then came the day of the pitch. They stood before Sarah in a sleek conference room, nerves mingling with excitement. Matt spoke about his vision, and Amelia followed with the strategy and numbers. The synergy between them felt palpable, electric. And then, as they reached the climax of their presentation, Sarah leaned forward, her eyes shimmering with interest. This is impressive, she stated, her voice charged with authority. But it's your passion that's shining through. You're both doing something remarkable. At that moment, Amelia's heart raced. It wasn't just about the investment, it was validation. She could hardly believe it when she saw a glint in Matt's eyes that mirrored her own disbelief. Thank you, Amelia said, her voice trembling with emotion. And as Sarah discussed the terms of their impending partnership, Amelia found herself smiling at Matt. The man with the mismatched shoes had turned out to be someone far more powerful than she'd ever imagined. In that room, surrounded by graphs and charts, they felt an undeniable bond of partnership grounded not just in ideas, but in shared visions and belief. Moments later, as they stood outside the building, Amelia couldn't resist a teasing grin. Matt laughed, his spirit light. They walked away together, shoulders squared, minds blazing with possibilities. Amelia realized then that first impressions could be deceiving. She had learned to look beyond appearances, to seek out the layers of truth in a person. That journey from eye-rolling judgment to collaboration had transformed not only their outlook, but the paths ahead of them. Sure, he wore mismatched shoes, but those shoes carried a story, ambition, and a soul. As the sun dipped behind the city skyline, they stepped forward, ready to build something extraordinary together. Amelia stood in the crowded cafe, her heart racing as she clutched her notes tightly. The air buzzed with conversation, the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with the warmth of baked goods. But right there at the table in the corner was the man who turned her world upside down. He sat with his laptop open, dressed in a wrinkled blazer that seemed to swallow him whole. But it was his shoes, one black and one brown, that really caught her eye. She rolled her eyes, her patience wavering. How could someone show up to a networking event dressed like that? It was a big day for her, and every detail mattered. She was about to pitch her fashion startup to one of the most influential investors in the industry. All she could think was that he looked completely unprepared. As she sipped her cappuccino, she tried to refocus on her own plans. Her startup was built on a revolutionary online platform designed to bring people together through personalized fashion advice, stylish, savvy, and sophisticated. But the thought of the man in the corner with his mismatched shoes kept swirling in her mind, a storm cloud of doubt looming overhead. Then she saw her, a tall woman whose presence seemed to radiate power and assurance. Sarah Kingston, the investor of dreams, glided through the room like a queen surveying her realm. She was known for her ability to spot raw talent and for turning ideas into success stories. Amelia could feel her heart pounding in anticipation. This was her moment, her chance to shine. As Sarah walked toward the table, Amelia held her breath. She couldn't help but wonder what the man had said to make such an esteemed investor stop in her tracks. Curiosity tugged at her, a flicker of potential partnership igniting inside. She leaned forward, straining to hear their conversation. Sarah asked with genuine interest. The man looked up, his surprise evident, and then, to her astonishment, he answered confidently. "I'm creating a platform for local artists to showcase their work through community spaces." Amelia felt a mix of disbelief and surprise. Did he just say that? Had he found a way to combine art, connection, and community? Her thoughts began to swirl as Sarah nodded along, taking notes. Suddenly, she felt a pinch of anxiety. What if he was onto something? What if his idea was the one that captured Sarah's attention? She shook her head, pushing the thoughts aside. Gathering her courage, Amelia decided to approach them. What was there to lose, after all? Maybe there was something to be learned from him, even if she wouldn't admit it at the moment. "Excuse me," she interjected, her heart racing as all eyes turned towards her. "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. That's an incredible idea," she said, forcing a smile that felt more like a mask. The man said, his eyes brightening. Sarah asked, directing the conversation back. "Matt," he replied, gesturing to the empty chair across the table. Amelia hesitated but then sat down, feeling a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "I'm Amelia," Matt asked, leaning forward. Amelia's mind raced, and for a moment she forgot about the shoes. "I think it's all about authenticity and engagement," she replied. "And so do artists, I imagine," Sarah chimed in, the wheels clearly turning in her head. "Yes," Matt responded, shyly at first but gaining confidence. "Artists often feel alienated." The conversation flowed, and Amelia felt the spark ignite. They discussed marketing strategies, user engagement, and the artistic community's need for visibility. It was exhilarating. Her initial judgments faded as she found herself genuinely listening to Matt's insights. His passion was infectious, and soon she began to see how their visions could intersect. Amelia asked before she could think better of it. Matt looked down at his shoes for a moment, taking a deep breath. "I grew up in an artistic family. My mom was a painter and my dad played music. We didn't have much, but the arts brought us joy. I want to create that joy for others," he said, almost vulnerable now. Amelia felt an unexpected pang of empathy. It was one thing to pitch numbers and data, but to share a personal story, that was something different entirely. Then it struck her. He wasn't just an odd man in mismatched shoes. He was someone with substance, depth, and a vision. "I really believe you can do something with this idea," she said, her tone sincere. Just then, a shadow flickered across the table as Sarah leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I'd love to see where this conversation leads." At that moment, tension filled the small cafe. The air crackled with possibilities as they brainstormed concepts and ideas that flowed freely. The dismissive thoughts of the man's appearance were erased by the rhythm of their dialogue, a melody of dreams and ambitions. But then reality hit when Sarah said, "You'll both need a solid plan to present to investors." Matt blinked, and Amelia felt a wave of dread wash over her. She asked, folding her arms over her chest defensively. "You need to define your mission clearly, project growth, and develop strategies for sustainability," Sarah explained. "Of course," Matt replied, but uncertainty seeped through. As the conversation moved on, Amelia watched the spark in Matt's eyes flicker. She sensed his enthusiasm waning. She couldn't let that happen. "Why don't we team up? We can put together a presentation that highlights both of our visions," she suggested, her confidence bubbling to the surface. Matt looked at her, a mixture of surprise and hope in his gaze. "Absolutely, let's make this happen," Amelia said, feeling her adrenaline mix with excitement. The thought of collaborating felt electrifying. The cafe buzzed with their fervor as they discussed potential partnerships, outreach ideas, and shared contacts they both had. The conversations drifted effortlessly from one point to another, filled with spontaneity and zeal. And then, as if fate had orchestrated it, Amelia found herself outlining a plan with Matt on the back of a napkin while they sipped their coffee. "We should aim to connect with schools and community centers," she noted, the ideas flowing freely. Matt grinned. "And what if we organize pop-up exhibitions where not only does it showcase art, but allows for workshops?" That sparked something in both of them, their creative flow igniting like wildfire. Each new idea built upon the previous till the lines between their visions blurred. They were both fueled by purpose, and slowly her initial judgment about Matt melted away. As the sun began to set, they knew they were onto something. Sarah leaned back, a satisfied smile on her face, watching the two connect. "You both have chemistry, I like it," she said, her voice confident yet warm. They wrapped up the discussion, and Sarah stood to leave, promising to return for their pitch. As she walked away, Amelia felt a rush of satisfaction. Matt asked, still processing it all. "I mean, from this morning to now," she replied, suddenly reveling in the energy that flowed between them. Matt laughed, glancing down at his mismatched footwear. Barely the right shoe for an important meeting, Amelia teased, smiling. Laughter between them felt light yet meaningful. In that moment, a partnership began to blossom, one fueled by creativity and mutual respect. Over the next week, they dove into the project, mapping out their vision. They met late into the night, skimming through research, developing their pitch slide by slide. It felt as if they were crafting a symphony of ideas, with each note resonating in harmony, but the pressure didn't escape them. As they rehearsed for the big day, stress brewed under the surface. Thought cycles filled with self-doubt started to creep in. The stakes felt high, especially with the invaluable opportunity they had ahead of them. On the day of the pitch, they stepped into the sleek boardroom, their hearts pounding against their rib cages. Amelia couldn't shake the adrenaline coursing through her. Matt stood beside her, his eyes serious yet focused. "This is it," he whispered, a note of determination in his voice. As they began their presentation, the initial nerves melted away, replaced by conviction. They alternated between speaking, presenting their well-crafted slides, and recounting their personal stories, the artistry, the connection, and the impact they hoped to create. Sarah listened intently, her brow furrowing as she absorbed everything. As Matt wrapped up their final piece, they both held their breath, waiting for her response. "This is impressive," she said, her voice enveloping the room. "You both have passion, but you also have a plan," she continued, her tone shifting toward excitement. At that moment, Amelia felt a wave of relief wash over her. They'd done it. The time spent brainstorming, the late nights, all of it had led to this. She turned to Matt, their eyes meeting with a shared understanding, a profound realization that they had both grown from this experience. As they left the boardroom, the initial disbelief that had marked their first meeting had transformed into a bond forged through creativity and purpose. "You did great back there," Matt said, grinning from ear to ear. She laughed, feeling lighter than she had in days. "That means a lot, especially coming from you," he replied, and in that moment she felt her heart lift even higher. It wasn't just about business, it was about a connection that had been built, a friendship that had blossomed unexpectedly. As they stood outside, basking in the sunlight, a new chapter was beginning for both of them. They walked side by side, no longer merely as one person in mismatched shoes and another in polished heels, but as partners united in vision, ready to embrace the future together. And in the end, Amelia knew that all it took was a moment of vulnerability to see the world through someone else's eyes. Sometimes it was the most unexpected places, the most unlikely connections that turned into the greatest adventures, changing lives in ways she never thought possible. The clinking of coffee cups echoed through the bustling cafe, but Amelia's focus was entirely on the man in the corner. He was hunched over a table, his attention glued to a battered notebook. She could hardly believe he was serious about anything. His outfit screamed of neglect: a wrinkled blazer, 2 sizes too big, and mismatched shoes, one black and one brown. Her lips pressed together as she fought the urge to roll her eyes. How could he expect anyone to take him seriously looking like that? Today was important for Amelia. She was there to pitch her groundbreaking fashion startup to one of the most admired investors in the industry, Sarah Kingston. She wasn't going to let her day be spoiled by someone who apparently didn't even care how they presented themselves. Fighting against the tide of judgmental thoughts, Amelia took a sip of her vanilla latte and reminded herself of her mission. Her company was innovative, a platform designed to connect individuals with personalized fashion advice and community engagement. But all her confidence was draining away as she kept glancing over at the man. Did he even know where he was? Suddenly, as if sensing her scrutiny, he looked up. His eyes caught hers for a fleeting moment, and Amelia felt an unexpected wave of curiosity rush over her. There was something in his gaze, an intensity mixed with a hint of uncertainty. But then he returned to scribbling furiously in his notebook, and the moment passed. Just then, Sarah entered the cafe, her presence commanding immediate attention. Dressed impeccably in a fitted suit that whispered sophistication, she scanned the room like a hawk. Amelia's heart raced. This was her moment, the opportunity she had worked so hard for. As Sarah approached the counter, Amelia took a deep breath and repositioned her laptop, readying for her pitch. But then she caught the sight of Sarah walking toward the man in the corner. What was this? Amelia's stomach twisted. As Sarah leaned in to speak with him, curiosity turned to dread. Amelia pushed back her chair and stood, determined to not let this unexpected turn derail her ambitions. What if the guy had some crazy idea that captured Sarah's attention? Amelia couldn't allow that to happen. She approached their table, her heart pounding like a drum. "Excuse me," she interrupted, stepping into their conversation. All eyes turned toward her and she forced a smile. "I couldn't help but overhear your discussion." The man looked surprised, his eyes widening as if caught off guard. Yes, I'm Matt." Her heart raced, but instead of dismissing him, she decided to engage. "That's very interesting," she said, forcing enthusiasm into her tone. As she spoke, she instinctively glanced at his shoes again. Did he even understand the power of presentation, or perhaps he was trying to make a statement about authenticity? No matter, she had her own ideas to push forward. "Well," Sarah interjected, her voice smooth and confident, "it sounds intriguing, but you'll have to flesh it out before anyone becomes invested." There are many factors to consider in this market: sustainability, targeted marketing, outreach. Matt shifted in his seat, the confidence in his expression wavering slightly. Amelia felt a rise of determination. This was her shot. She leaned in. What if you collaborated with schools and community programs to host workshops? Both Matt and Sarah paused, the suggestions hanging in the air like an unexpected gift. Amelia felt a rush of pride. Matt's eyes brightened after hearing her perspective. That's a great idea. It opens so many doors for collaboration. Sarah smiled, but there was still that measuring gaze in her eyes. You are articulating your vision well, but it's not enough to pitch ideas. You need a plan, numbers, and a clear mission statement to make it compelling. Amelia could see the frustration building behind Matt's eyes, the tension thickening the air around them. It was easy to feel overwhelmed when faced with the possibility of failure. So let's help each other, Amelia suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. We can form a team. Matt blinked, surprised. Really? The excitement rushed out of her. Imagine combining your passion for art and community with my experience in the fashion industry. At that moment, a quickened energy pulsed through the air, igniting a spark of creativity. They began exchanging ideas, brainstorming ways to structure their project more effectively. Sarah leaned back, observing, her expression a mix of curiosity and intrigue. As they flowed into the conversation, laughter punctuated their ideas. The initial judgments melted away, replaced by a wave of collaboration. They discussed strategies, user engagement, and community outreach, each idea sparking new excitement, but the euphoria was short-lived. A slight shadow fell over Matt's face as he leaned back in his chair. But the truth is, I've never pitched anything before. Everyone has to start somewhere, Amelia said, her voice steady. He wondered aloud, his eyes drifting to his mismatched shoes. Hey, she said, her tone firm yet gentle. You're more than your shoes. This is a chance to share something valuable. Matt nodded slowly, absorbing her words. There was a vulnerability in him that surprised her. It wasn't just about the shoes anymore. It was about two people who shared a desire to make a difference, and both were armed with their own fears. As they continued to brainstorm, Amelia glanced out the window, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson. The world felt larger in that moment, and the possibilities before them started to feel limitless. Over the next few days, their collaboration deepened. Amelia pulled up research, analyzing market trends, while Matt mapped out his vision in painstaking detail. They were a whirlwind of ideas, late-night meetings fueled by coffee and creativity. But beneath the surface, doubt still simmered. Matt questioned one evening, his brow furrowed in silence. It's about how we present it, Matt, Amelia replied, her voice steady. Every idea is unique in its delivery. Finally, the day of the pitch arrived. They stood outside the towering building, nerves rippling through them. Amelia felt every heartbeat pulse with possibility, both exhilarating and terrifying. Matt asked, glancing down at his shoes again, the familiar self-doubt creeping back in. More than ready, she replied, squaring her shoulders. As they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere shifted. A long table stretched in front of them, seats filled with curious, expectant faces, including Sarah's. They took their places, hearts racing. When they began to present, the words flowed fluidly. Amelia took the lead, detailing the vision and market potential, while Matt followed seamlessly, expressing his passion for community and art. Each point built upon the last, and Amelia could see Sarah nodding, eyes alight with interest. As they wrapped up, she could feel the tension in the room shift. There was an electric energy humming in the air, and they both shared a nervous glance, a silent agreement that they had done their best. Impressive, Sarah said, leaning back in her chair. You both have put together a compelling pitch. Thank you, they replied in unison, the relief washing over them like a tidal wave. But just as Amelia began to allow herself to breathe, Sarah continued. However, there's something I urge you both to focus on. Data is important, but so is passion. At that moment, Amelia knew they had captured something intangible, the sheer force of belief behind their ideas. For a fleeting moment, she thought about those mismatched shoes again, the man who had surprised her in ways she never anticipated. I believe in this, Matt said, meeting Sarah's gaze, determination lighting up his features. As they exited the boardroom, that enormous weight of uncertainty dissolved, replaced by a sense of accomplishment. Outside, the day felt alive with promise. Matt turned to Amelia, admiration shining in his eyes. We did it. You did it, she corrected, beaming. It was in that moment of shared victory that Amelia realized how far they had come. Two unlikely allies turned partners, bound by a shared goal. Days turned into weeks, and as they continued to work hand in hand, their partnership grew. Information flowed, ideas bounced back and forth, and moments of laughter filled the air. At last, a few weeks later, Sarah called them back for a second meeting. Sitting across the table from her, Amelia felt a flutter of nerves mixed with excitement. I see great potential in your project, Sarah stated, her tone businesslike yet warm. Joy bubbled up within Amelia, but she quickly glanced at Matt, who wore an expression of pure disbelief. They exchanged glances, and time seemed to freeze. Thank you, Amelia managed to say, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions. As they signed the papers, Matt leaned over to her, his voice barely a whisper. No, she answered, filled with joy. As the future loomed before them like a vast horizon, they both knew this was just the beginning. And even though Amelia had initially dismissed Matt based on his appearance, she understood now that identity transcends looks. True potential comes from the heart, the passion, and the ideas that live within us. In a world where first impressions often dictate the course of events, she had learned to see beyond shoes, beyond attire, into the very essence of a person. As they walked out of the office together, Amelia couldn't help but smile at the journey that had brought them here, the unexpected connections that had changed their lives. That day, mismatched shoes had turned into symbols, not of judgment, but of authenticity and ambition. It was a powerful reminder that often the most extraordinary things arise from the most unexpected places, and trust in each other could pave the way toward a brighter future. The cafe buzzed with excitement, the scent of freshly brewed coffee swirling through the air. Amelia sat at a corner table, her heart racing as she reviewed her notes for the big pitch. This was it. A chance to present her innovative fashion startup to an investor who could change everything. Her excitement, however, quickly soured when her gaze turned to the man sitting 2 tables away. He wore a lopsided blazer, an oversized shirt, and worst of all, mismatched shoes. One black, one brown. She rolled her eyes so hard it almost hurt. Hadn't he heard of dressing for success? As Amelia sipped her latte, she wondered how someone could be so careless, especially in a professional setting. She had poured weeks into preparing for this meeting. Every detail mattered, yet here was this guy, seemingly oblivious to the world around him. Just then the door swung open, and in walked Sarah Kingston, the investor Amelia had dreamt of impressing. Sarah was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and instantly command attention with her tailored suit and piercing gaze. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat. Sarah made her way to the counter, scanning the cafe as she ordered her coffee. Amelia smoothed her hair, reminding herself to stay focused. But the moment she saw Sarah walk toward the man in the corner, a knot twisted in her stomach. Amelia thought, fighting against a wave of anxiety. As they exchanged words, Sarah leaned in, genuinely engaged. The man looked more confident than Amelia had seen him earlier, as if there were a spark igniting between them. Did he have some brilliant idea? Was he actually going to impress her? Amelia had to know. She stood up, her feet moving before her mind caught up. "Excuse me," she said, interrupting their conversation. Their eyes turned toward her, surprise evident on their faces. "I couldn't help but overhear." The man looked nervous but managed a smile. Yes, I'm Matt," Amelia said, forcing her voice to sound enthusiastic. "That sounds fascinating." "Exactly," Matt replied, visibly encouraged by her words. Amelia responded, glancing at Sarah, who was nodding thoughtfully. Matt nodded, looking slightly deflated. "I understand," he said quietly, "but this was it." Amelia felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her. "What if we brainstormed together? I could help you refine your pitch," Matt asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. She exclaimed. The tension began to lift, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. As they dove into conversation, ideas flowed like water. They discussed the ways to engage artists, incorporate workshops, and create a unique experience for the community. It was exhilarating. Amelia's initial judgment about Matt began to fade as she saw the conviction in his eyes, but then doubt crept in. Matt said, his voice barely above a whisper. Amelia met his gaze, her heart softening. "Everyone deals with fear," she said, "but remember, you have something special to offer." Just then, Sarah leaned in, her interest piqued. "The two of you have chemistry. I want to see where this goes." Matt's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Amelia felt a rush of hope at the prospect of working together. They exchanged contact information and promised to meet again, energized by the possibilities before them. After parting ways, Amelia couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted within her. She had gone from judgment to collaboration, an unexpected partnership born from a casual cafe meeting. Her heart fluttered with the thrill of new beginnings. As the days passed, they worked tirelessly. A mix of late-night brainstorming sessions and coffee-fueled meetings became their new normal. They mapped out research, refined their pitches, and even discussed their personal journeys. During one of their late-night sessions, Amelia shared her background. "I grew up in a small town where the arts were often overlooked." In that moment, Matt opened up too. "I grew up in a creative family, but when I tried to pursue art academically, I was constantly told to take a different path." Their connection deepened, and with it, Amelia began to see past the mismatched shoes. They weren't a sign of negligence, they were badges of authenticity. Every time she saw them, she felt a smile creep up her face, a spark of inspiration lighting her way. Finally, the day of the pitch arrived. They stood outside the sleek corporate building, filled with excitement and nerves. Amelia glanced at Matt, who fidgeted with his mismatched shoes, a reminder of their journey. "You're going to do great," she said reassuringly. "Easy for you to say. You look amazing," he replied, a blush creeping onto his cheeks. Steeling themselves, they entered the building, the air thick with anticipation. As they walked into the boardroom, they found themselves faced with a panel of investors. Nervous energy buzzed in the room, but they were ready. With each slide, they unveiled their vision, combining their unique perspectives. Amelia spoke about the importance of community engagement, while Matt shared heartfelt stories of artists who had struggled to find their footing. Sarah's keen gaze never left them, her interest palpable. The atmosphere shifted as they built momentum, their passion suffusing the room. For the first time, both of them felt invincible. Just as they reached the climax of their presentation, a moment of silence fell. The investors were taking it in. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with inspiration. "What resonates with me is your authenticity." As she spoke, Matt's face transformed from anxiety to determination. "We do believe in this," he said eagerly. The tension in the room dissolved, replaced by a collective sigh of relief and hope. Their journey had led them to this moment, a moment where passion met opportunity. Finally, they wrapped up the pitch and exited the room, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Once outside, Amelia felt the pure thrill of possibility. They had opened a door together. Matt grinned, his smile infective, even reaching his eyes. "I can," Amelia replied, her heart swelling with pride. Days later, they received an email from Sarah inviting them back to discuss the next steps. As they walked into the room, anticipation hung thick in the air. "I'm excited about what you two are building," Sarah said. "I want to invest." Amelia's heart soared. "Thank you." In that moment, Amelia glanced at Matt. Those mismatched shoes had transformed entirely in her eyes. No longer symbols of negligence, they represented creativity, passion, and authenticity. As they stepped out of the building, the world outside shimmered with new possibilities. Together, they had created something incredible. In the weeks and months that followed, their startup blossomed. They organized pop-up exhibitions that connected artists with communities, sparking conversations and inspiring change. Amelia knew deep down that they were making an impact. Through it all, she learned to look beyond appearances, to connect with the heart and soul of a person. The journey had taught her not to judge by first impressions, but to explore the stories waiting to unfold. Amelia paused, a smile spreading across her face. "Don't let anyone dictate your path." They both laughed, a sound filled with joy and camaraderie, knowing they had found a lifelong partnership. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over their workspace, they embraced the moment in each other. It had been a journey of transformation, one that led them to discover the beauty of collaboration and the power of genuine connection. And Amelia realized, more than anything, it was the heart behind those shoes that truly mattered, not just to her, but to everyone they hoped to inspire. The cafe buzzed with excitement, the scent of freshly brewed coffee swirling through the air. Amelia sat at a corner table, her heart racing as she reviewed her notes for the big pitch. This was it, a chance to present her innovative fashion startup to an investor who could change everything. Her excitement quickly soured when her gaze turned to the man sitting 2 tables away. He wore a lopsided blazer, an oversized shirt, and worst of all, mismatched shoes. One black, one brown. She rolled her eyes so hard it almost hurt. Hadn't he heard of dressing for success? As Amelia sipped her latte, she wondered how someone could be so careless, especially in a professional setting. She had poured weeks into preparing for this meeting. Every detail mattered. Yet here was this guy, seemingly oblivious to the world around him. Just then the door swung open, and in walked Sarah Kingston, the investor Amelia had dreamt of impressing. Sarah was the kind of woman who could walk into any room and instantly command attention with her tailored suit and piercing gaze. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat. Sarah made her way to the counter, scanning the cafe as she ordered her coffee. Amelia smoothed her hair, reminding herself to stay focused. But the moment she saw Sarah walk toward the man in the corner, a knot twisted in her stomach. Amelia thought, fighting against a wave of anxiety. As they exchanged words, Sarah leaned in, genuinely engaged. The man looked more confident than Amelia had seen him earlier, as if there were a spark igniting between them. Did he have some brilliant idea? Was he actually going to impress her? Amelia had to know. She stood up, her feet moving before her mind caught up. "Excuse me," she said, interrupting their conversation. Their eyes turned toward her, surprise evident on their faces. "I couldn't help but overhear." The man looked nervous but managed a smile. Yes, I'm Matt," Amelia said, forcing her voice to sound enthusiastic. "That sounds fascinating." "Exactly," Matt replied, visibly encouraged by her words. Amelia responded, glancing at Sarah, who was nodding thoughtfully. Matt nodded, looking slightly deflated. "I understand," he said quietly, "but this was it." Amelia felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her. "What if we brainstormed together? I could help you refine your pitch," Matt asked, a flicker of hope in his eyes. She exclaimed. The tension began to lift, replaced by a sense of camaraderie. As they dove into conversation, ideas flowed like water. They discussed the ways to engage artists, incorporate workshops, and create a unique experience for the community. It was exhilarating. Amelia's initial judgment about Matt began to fade as she saw the conviction in his eyes, but then doubt crept in. Matt said, his voice barely above a whisper. Amelia met his gaze, her heart softening. "Everyone deals with fear," she said, "but remember, you have something special to offer." Just then, Sarah leaned in, her interest piqued. "The two of you have chemistry. I want to see where this goes." Matt's eyes sparkled with excitement, and Amelia felt a rush of hope at the prospect of working together. They exchanged contact information and promised to meet again, energized by the possibilities before them. After parting ways, Amelia couldn't shake off the feeling that something had shifted within her. He had gone from judgment to collaboration, an unexpected partnership born from a casual cafe meeting. Her heart fluttered with the thrill of new beginnings. As the days passed, they worked tirelessly. A mix of late-night brainstorming sessions and coffee-fueled meetings became their new normal. They mapped out research, refined their pitches, and even discussed their personal journeys. During one of their late-night sessions, Amelia shared her background. "I grew up in a small town where the arts were often overlooked." In that moment, Matt opened up too. "I grew up in a creative family, but when I tried to pursue art academically, I was constantly told to take a different path." Their connection deepened, and with it, Amelia began to see past the mismatched shoes. They weren't a sign of negligence, they were badges of authenticity. Every time she saw them, she felt a smile creep up her face, a spark of inspiration lighting her way. Finally, the day of the pitch arrived. They stood outside the sleek corporate building, filled with excitement and nerves. Amelia glanced at Matt, who fidgeted with his mismatched shoes, a reminder of their journey. "You're going to do great," she said reassuringly. "Easy for you to say. You look amazing," he replied, a blush creeping onto his cheeks. Steeling themselves, they entered the building, the air thick with anticipation. As they walked into the boardroom, they found themselves faced with a panel of investors. Nervous energy buzzed in the room, but they were ready. With each slide, they unveiled their vision, combining their unique perspectives. Amelia spoke about the importance of community engagement, while Matt shared heartfelt stories of artists who had struggled to find their footing. Sarah's keen gaze never left them, her interest palpable. The atmosphere shifted as they built momentum, their passion suffusing the room. For the first time, both of them felt invincible. Just as they reached the climax of their presentation, a moment of silence fell. The investors were taking it in. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes bright with inspiration. "What resonates with me is your authenticity." As she spoke, Matt's face transformed from anxiety to determination. "We do believe in this," he said eagerly. The tension in the room dissolved, replaced by a collective sigh of relief and hope. Their journey had led them to this moment, a moment where passion met opportunity. Finally, they wrapped up the pitch and exited the room, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Once outside, Amelia felt the pure thrill of possibility. They had opened a door together. Matt grinned, his smile infective, even reaching his eyes. "I can," Amelia replied, her heart swelling with pride. Days later, they received an email from Sarah inviting them back to discuss the next steps. As they walked into the room, anticipation hung thick in the air. "I see great potential in your project," Sarah said. "I want to invest." Amelia's heart soared. "Thank you." In that moment, Amelia glanced at Matt. Those mismatched shoes had transformed entirely in her eyes. No longer symbols of negligence, they represented creativity, passion, and authenticity. As they stepped out of the building, the world outside shimmered with new possibilities. Together, they had created something incredible. In the weeks and months that followed, their startup blossomed. They organized pop-up exhibitions that connected artists with communities, sparking conversations and inspiring change. Amelia knew deep down that they were making an impact. Through it all, she learned to look beyond appearances, to connect with the heart and soul of a person. The journey had taught her not to judge by first impressions, but to explore the stories waiting to unfold. Amelia paused, a smile spreading across her face. "Don't let anyone dictate your path." They both laughed, a sound filled with joy and camaraderie, knowing they had found a lifelong partnership. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over their workspace, they embraced the moment and each other. It had been a journey of transformation, one that led them to discover the beauty of collaboration and the power of genuine connection. And Amelia realized more than anything, it was the heart behind those shoes that truly mattered, not just to her, but to everyone they hoped to inspire. In a world filled with judgments, they had become a force of change together, fueled by passion, empathy, and the willingness to see beyond the surface. The cafe was filled with the rhythmic clinking of cups and the soft hum of conversation, but Amelia was deaf to it all. Her heart raced as she sat at a small table, her laptop open and her hands trembling slightly. Today was everything. She was about to pitch her fashion startup to a well-known investor, and the stakes had never felt higher. But that anticipation quickly turned sour as her gaze landed on the man seated 2 tables away. He was hunched over a chaotic mix of papers and a laptop, dressed in an oversized blazer that looked like it belonged to someone else. But what caught Amelia's eye most were his shoes, one black, one brown, and one of them scuffed. She could hardly hide her contempt. How could he show up to a meeting like this? Didn't he know how important first impressions were? Rolling her eyes, Amelia took a deep breath, trying to shake off the judgment that clouded her mind. She had to focus. She had devoted countless hours perfecting her pitch, and she needed to be laser-focused. This was her shot and opportunity to change her life, to turn her vision into a reality. Just then, the door swung open, and in walked Sarah Kingston, the investor Amelia had been hoping to impress. Sarah was the kind of woman who commanded a room without saying a word. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, she strode in with purpose, her presence radiating confidence. Amelia's heart sped up even more. As Sarah ordered her coffee, Amelia watched anxiously, mentally rehearsing her pitch. But soon her focus shifted once more to the man in the corner. To her surprise, Sarah walked straight towards him, her interest piqued. Amelia thought, a new wave of anxiety washing over her. As Sarah leaned in closer, exchanging words with him, something in the way they interacted caught Amelia off guard. The man seemed more animated, his posture shifting from timid to enthusiastic. Was he actually impressing her? Just as Amelia wrestled with a mix of jealousy and curiosity, the small voice in her head urged her forward. Gathering her courage, she rose from her chair and made her way to their table. "Excuse me," she interrupted, her heart pounding in her chest. "Yes," the man replied, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "I'm Matt." "Interesting," Amelia said, forcing a smile that felt foreign on her face. "That could be valuable." "Yes, I realized that," Matt replied, his earlier confidence slipping. A surge of empathy washed over Amelia. Maybe this guy wasn't so bad after all. She took a deep breath and decided to take a leap of faith. "What if we brainstorm together? I'd love to help you refine your pitch." He looked at her, astonished yet hopeful. She said, feeling the tension lifting from the atmosphere as she spoke. Even Sarah seemed intrigued, leaning closer to listen. The three of them began to discuss ideas, and as Amelia engaged with Matt, her initial judgments began to dissolve. His passion for the arts was evident, and for the first time she saw him as someone more than just a guy with mismatched shoes. They talked about engaging local communities, connecting artists with their audiences, and how to make their ideas resonate. "Artists often struggle for exposure," Matt said, his enthusiasm bubbling over. Amelia said, excitement spreading through her. "And think about workshops where people can actually meet the artists." As ideas flowed between them, the connection felt surprisingly natural, as if they were co-creating something powerful. But then, just as quickly, doubt clouded the moment. Matt said, his voice lower now, the sparkle in his eyes dimming with uncertainty. Amelia stepped in, her voice steadying. "Everyone experiences fear, but you have something valuable to share." Sarah looked on, clearly impressed by the chemistry forming between the two of them. "You both have interesting ideas, and I want to see where this goes," she said, her voice firm yet encouraging. The surge of determination coursed through the air as they exchanged contact information. They parted ways, but Amelia felt different changed. What started as a passing judgment had blossomed into a promising partnership, the kind that only surfaced through unexpected encounters. Over the next few days, they met frequently. They drank countless cups of coffee, plotted strategies, and turned ideas into actionable plans. As the late nights turned into a series of brainstorming sessions, Amelia learned about Matt not just as a colleague, but as a person. "I grew up in a town where support for the arts was practically non-existent," he confessed one night, his eyes lighting up as he spoke. "I watched my mom struggle as a painter." Hearing his story resonated with Amelia. She realized that behind those mismatched shoes lay a heart full of passion and determination. She too had faced her challenges, struggling to get noticed in a saturated fashion industry where judgment was common and first impressions mattered. Throughout their meetings, the initial spark of partnership began to grow into something deeper. Whenever she glanced at his shoes, instead of scoffing, she chuckled, realizing they had become a symbol, a reminder that judgments could be misleading. Finally, the day of the big pitch arrived. Dressed in her best outfit, Amelia felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She looked at Matt, who was fiddling with his mismatched shoes again. "You're going to crush it," she said, straightening up. "Thanks," he replied, a nervous smile breaking across his face. As they walked into the boardroom packed with investors, the atmosphere was electric. They took their positions at the front of the room, and with each slide, they peeled back layers of their vision. Amelia took the lead, explaining the importance of local artistry, while Matt shared heartfelt stories of artists he had connected with. Sarah watched intently, a slight smile playing at her lips. The energy in the room shifted. They were resonating with the audience. Quotes, metrics, and visuals seamlessly complemented their heartfelt stories. It felt like magic. As they neared the end, a silence fell over the room. Amelia felt the weight of their hopes entwined in that quiet moment. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes shining bright. "I'm truly impressed by what both of you have created," she declared. Matt glanced at Amelia, excitement bubbling back to life. "We're here to make a difference," he said, his voice strong now. The tension released into the air as Sarah nodded, clearly moved. She glanced at the other investors, all of them engaged, and they exchanged knowing looks. Finally, they wrapped up the pitch and exited the room, adrenaline surging through them both. Once outside, the exhilaration of success washed over Amelia. She exclaimed, her voice rising in disbelief. Matt echoed, grinning from ear to ear. Days later, they received an email from Sarah inviting them back to discuss further. As they walked into the conference room, excitement gnawed in Amelia's stomach, but Matt looked nervous again, glancing down at his shoes. "Breathe," Amelia whispered, grounding them both. As they entered the room, Sarah smiled warmly. "You two have something special here. I'm excited to invest in your project." Amelia's heart soared, and she turned to Matt, who bore an expression of utter disbelief. They both said in unison. Matt's mismatched shoes, once mere objects of ridicule, now felt like symbols of their journey, one filled with authenticity and determination. As they stepped out of the meeting, a sense of accomplishment enveloped them. The world outside shimmered with possibility, and together they had created something truly meaningful. In the months that followed, their startup launched into success. They organized pop-up exhibitions, connecting artists with communities in ways that sparked inspiration and conversation. Each new event felt like a milestone, a sign that they were making a difference. Throughout it all, Amelia reflected on the lessons learned. She'd learned to look beyond appearances, to discover the heart behind the shoes. In her newfound understanding, she came to embrace the unexpected. One afternoon, while preparing for another exhibition, she turned to Matt. He rubbed the back of his neck, pondering for a moment. "I'd say to never allow someone else's judgments to dictate your path." They erupted into laughter, the genuine joy of friendship and partnership glowing brightly between them. As the sun cast a warm glow over their workspace, they took a moment to breathe it all in. Their journey had transformed not only their careers, but also their lives, a journey that had led them to discover the profound power of collaboration and the beauty of genuine connection. They had turned a casual encounter into a lifelong partnership, shedding the weight of judgment along the way. In a world often quick to stereotype, they had become advocates for authenticity, proving that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with a pair of mismatched shoes. Amelia stood at the edge of the bustling cafe, her heart racing and her palms slightly sweaty. Today was the day that could change everything. Today, she would pitch her fashion startup to Sarah Kingston, the investor everyone in the industry coveted. This opportunity was her golden ticket, but as she glanced around the crowded room, her attention fell on him. He was sitting at a small table, hunched over a tattered notebook. His attire resembled something pulled from a clearance rack, an oversized blazer and a wrinkled shirt. But it was his shoes that drew her eye, a pair of mismatched footwear, one black and one brown, scuffed and worn. Amelia rolled her eyes, unable to help herself. Who would come to such an important meeting looking like that? She shook her head, trying to refocus on her notes. After all, she had worked tirelessly to prepare for this moment. Her startup was innovative, a digital platform designed to connect people with personalized fashion advice and community engagement. Every detail had been meticulously planned, and here was this guy, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. Just then, the door swung open and in walked Sarah. The atmosphere shifted, a hush fell over the room as all heads turned toward her. Dressed in a sleek, tailored suit, Sarah radiated confidence. Amelia's heart raced. This was her moment. But as she watched, Sarah approached the man with the mismatched shoes. Amelia thought, a knot tightening in her stomach. They exchanged a few words, and Sarah leaned in closer, her interest piqued. The man Matt, she later learned, seemed to light up, his confidence infusing the space around him. Was he impressing her? The anxiety began to bubble up. Maybe he had something worth sharing, something that would overshadow her hard work. Before she knew it, Amelia was crossing the cafe floor, her feet moving of their own accord. "Excuse me," she interrupted, catching their attention. Matt looked surprised but managed to smile. Yes, I'm Matt." "Sounds intriguing," Amelia said, forcing her voice to be friendly. "Definitely," he replied, the light in his eyes dimming slightly. A wave of empathy washed over her. Amelia remembered the countless hours she'd spent worrying about her own pitch, her own fears and doubts flooding back. She proposed, surprising even herself. Matt asked, skepticism flickering across his face. "Absolutely." The tension in the air began to shift as the three of them fell into conversation. Even Sarah leaned in, intrigued by the collaboration forming before her. As ideas bounced around the table, Amelia felt a spark of creativity. They discussed engaging local artists, organizing workshops, and making connections with the community. It was exhilarating. Each new concept brought them closer together, and Amelia couldn't help but notice the passion radiating from Matt. But just as quickly, Matt's excitement was snuffed out by doubt. He murmured, looking down at his mismatched shoes as if they represented all his insecurities. "Hey," Amelia said, her tone shifting from encouragement to firm resolve. "Everyone faces fear. You need to trust in what you're creating." Matt met her gaze, the uncertainty still flickering in his eyes. "I've never pitched anything like this before." "Then they laugh," Amelia replied, surprising even herself with her honesty. "But you'll know you stood up and shared your vision." Sarah nodded with interest. "You both have a unique chemistry. I want to see where this goes," she said, her voice confident and powerful. With renewed determination, Matt and Amelia exchanged contact information. A pact formed amidst the coffee-scented air. As they parted ways, Amelia felt a different kind of excitement blooming within her. This was turning into something unexpected. In the days that followed, they worked tirelessly, bouncing ideas off each other, fueled by caffeine and creativity. Late-night brainstorming sessions became routines, with laughter and genuine connection weaving into their partnership. On one particularly late night, Amelia shared her personal story. "I grew up in a small town where the arts were dismissed." Matt nodded, eyes wide. "I know what you mean. My mom was an artist, but when I tried to follow in her footsteps, I was constantly told I wouldn't make a living doing it." In that moment, the weight of judgment Amelia had felt toward him melted away. Matt wasn't just a guy wearing mismatched shoes. He was a man with a purpose-driven and passionate. Each time she glanced at his quirky footwear, it transformed into something different, a badge of honor rather than a sign of negligence. Finally, the day of the pitch arrived, clouded with a mix of excitement and nerves. They stood outside the corporate building, anxiety swirling between them. "You're going to do great," Amelia reassured him, trying to drown out her own nerves. She glanced down, absent-mindedly brushing dust from her shoes. "Thanks," he said, glancing down at his mismatched shoes in what seemed to be reflection. "Absolutely not," she laughed, a teasing glint in her eyes. "They're part of your story." As they stepped into the boardroom, the atmosphere shifted. Amelia could almost taste the electricity in the air. They took their places in front of a panel of investors, all eyes on them, the weight of their hopes nearly suffocating. Amelia began presenting their vision, narrating the importance of community and the arts. The passion she had bottled up for so long poured out, her voice steady and confident. Matt followed suit, sharing personal anecdotes and his dreams for the platform. With every word, they seemed to captivate the room. Time seemed to blur as they moved through their slides, showcasing visuals that captured the essence of what they were building together. In the middle of it all, Amelia caught Sarah's eyes focused, intrigued, and there was that small smile again. Something in her expression told Amelia they were connecting on a deeper level. As they concluded their pitch, an electric silence filled the room, and Amelia held her breath, waiting for the verdict. The tension was palpable. Finally, Sarah broke the silence, leaning forward with her arms crossed. "What I see here is authenticity." Matt's face lit up with a mix of surprise and relief. "We want to make a real difference," he said, his voice unwavering now. The tension in the room broke like a dam, releasing a torrent of hope and elation. Amelia felt a tear prick at the corners of her eyes. This was what they had worked for, what they had dreamed about. "You'll need a solid plan, and I want to help you develop that," Sarah stated, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. After they exited the boardroom, adrenaline surged through Amelia and Matt. They could hardly contain their excitement. Amelia gasped, unable to believe it. "Yeah," Matt echoed, his grin wide enough to light up the room. In the days that followed, the partnership evolved into something more than just business. It blossomed into a friendship. They organized workshops, pop-up exhibitions, and community events that connected local artists with their audience. With each success, Amelia felt a surge of pride not just in their accomplishments, but in the bond they had formed. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Nights filled with self-doubt crept in and questioned their path. What if we bomb our next pitch? Matt's face would carry worry. Amelia would remind him, when have we ever backed down from a challenge? Let's focus on what we can control. Months passed, and the idea that had begun in that bustling cafe transformed into a thriving community. Their platform began gaining traction, and they found themselves hosting events overflowing with creativity and passion. One bright afternoon, as they prepared for another exhibition, Matt turned to her, his expression sincere. Amelia smiled, the memories flooding back. "Don't ever let someone else's opinion dictate your path. Wear your mismatched shoes and be proud of them. Those shoes are just as valuable as your ideas." Matt chuckled, glancing down at his feet. "I think I'm okay with them now," he said, his words filled with newfound confidence. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with breathtaking colors, they took a moment to embrace the journey, the obstacles, the victories, and the connections made along the way. In that moment, surrounded by laughter, creativity, and a sense of belonging, Amelia realized just how far they had come. It wasn't merely about the business anymore. It was about the community they had built together and the authenticity that united them all. And as they embarked on new adventures, Amelia learned to look beyond what was on the surface, beyond the mismatched shoes, and seek out the richer stories waiting beneath. In a world that often judged based on appearances, they had created a sanctuary where passion and authenticity could flourish, igniting the spark of change that they desperately sought. Months later, as they stood before a crowd celebrating another successful exhibition, she knew that it had all started with a moment-to-moment that had shifted her perspective and opened her heart. And more than anything, Amelia was grateful for the man in the mismatched shoes, who had taught her the true meaning of courage and creativity. Together, they were writing a story that would inspire countless others to embrace their own journeys, no matter how mismatched they may seem. Amelia stared across the cafe, her heart pounding in her chest. The atmosphere buzzed with energy. The hiss of the espresso machine, the clinking of cups, and the faint chatter of patrons filled the air. But none of it mattered. She was fixated on one thing, the man sitting in the far corner. He was hunched over a table, scribbling frantically in a worn-out notebook. Amelia squinted, taking in his outfit, a blazer that looked 2 sizes too large and a shirt that had seen better days. But it was his shoes that truly stunned her. One was black, the other brown, and both were scuffed and battered. A wave of disdain washed over her as she rolled her eyes. Was he seriously expecting to catch the attention of anyone important like this? This day was crucial for Amelia. She had worked tirelessly to prepare for her pitch to Sarah Kingston, the investor who could change her life. It was a rare chance to get funding for her innovative fashion startup, and every detail mattered. She took a deep breath, mentally reminding herself to focus. But as she glanced back at that man, a knot tightened in her stomach. Sarah walked through the door, her presence immediately electrifying the room. Dressed in a tailored suit that screamed authority, Sarah surveyed the cafe with sharp, discerning eyes. Amelia's heart raced as she watched Sarah head straight toward the man with the mismatched shoes. Amelia's stomach dropped. The jealousy bubbled up as she watched Sarah line in, genuinely engaged in the conversation. Suddenly, the man who had looked so unassuming seemed animated, his eyes sparkling with excitement. What was happening? Was he actually impressing her? Enough is enough, Amelia muttered to herself. She felt an odd mix of curiosity and dread. Could he be onto something? She had to find out. Gathering her courage, she stood up and walked towards their table, her instincts pushing her forward. "Excuse me," she interrupted, drawing their attention. "I couldn't help but overhear your discussion." The man looked taken aback but quickly regained his composure. Yes, I'm Matt. I'm working on a platform for local artists to showcase their work," he said, his voice gaining strength. "That sounds interesting," Amelia said, forcing enthusiasm into her tone despite her earlier judgment. "Absolutely," Matt responded, the spark in his eyes dimming slightly. "But I'm not entirely sure where to start." "Maybe I can help," Amelia said before even realizing what she was saying. "I'm here to present my own startup today." His eyes widened in surprise and Sarah leaned back intrigued. Amelia could see the gears turning in both their minds. "Really?" Matt asked, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. Amelia replied, feeling her initial skepticism fade. The tension in the air shifted, and the three of them began to engage in a lively conversation. Ideas flowed freely between them, creating an immediate connection. Amelia suggested, her excitement bubbling up. "Could connect artists directly with local audiences," Matt exclaimed, his face lighting up. Sarah listened intently, nodding along as they fleshed out their ideas. Here was this man in his mismatched shoes just like her, yet he seemed to possess a unique perspective that resonated with people. But then the reality hit Matt. He asked, a shadow of doubt creeping back into his expression. "I've never done this before." "Hey," Amelia said, meeting his gaze with determination. "Everyone starts somewhere. You have something valuable to share." "Exactly," Sarah chimed in. "Show your passion." She leaned forward, a glimmer of intrigue in her eyes. "I want to see this develop further." Matt's face transformed with renewed excitement. Amelia felt an unexpected wave of pride swell within her. Here they were, two unlikely allies united by a common goal. Once the meeting wrapped, they exchanged contact information, filled with a sense of promise. As the cafe's energy enveloped her, Amelia felt a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. Maybe, just maybe, her initial judgments were completely wrong. Days passed, and Amelia and Matt worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and late-night brainstorming sessions. They dove deep into market research and crafted a solid business plan. The more time they spent together, the more their partnership flourished. One night, while poring over marketing strategies, Matt opened up, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I've always been told that pursuing art was a waste of time," he admitted quietly, "but I want to change that narrative for others." Amelia felt a lump form in her throat. "I understand completely. I've faced my own battles too." As they shared stories and dreams, their connection deepened, and Amelia began to see past those mismatched shoes. They weren't symbols of carelessness, they represented authenticity. With every passing day, she grew more confident in their project as well as in her partnership with Matt. Finally, the day of the pitch arrived. Butterflies fluttered in Amelia's stomach as they stood outside a towering office building. The moment felt daunting but also thrilling. She asked, adjusting her blazer and squaring her shoulders. Matt shifted nervously, glancing down at his mismatched shoes. "You won't," she reassured him, a smile on her face. "You've worked hard. Just remember how passionate you are about this." As they entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The investors sat around a long table, their eyes narrowing with interest. They exchanged nervous glances, but Amelia felt a current of determination flow through her. She took a deep breath and began presenting, outlining the vision and mission of their startup. The words spilled out, fueled by the countless hours they had devoted to honing every detail. She spoke about the importance of art and community, and as Matt followed with his stories of local artists, the energy in the room shifted. The investors were engaged, their body language indicated their interest. Matt's initial nervousness began to disappear as he settled into the rhythm of the pitch, feeding off Amelia's energy. Together, they painted a vivid picture of their shared dream, igniting sparks of inspiration in the air. As they concluded, an electrifying silence fell over the room. Amelia felt her heart race as she waited for feedback. The tension was palpable. Finally, Sarah leaned forward, her eyes keen and focused. "What I see here is not just a business idea, it's a movement. You both have tapped into something that resonates deeply." Matt's jaw dropped slightly and Amelia felt her heart lift. He asked, barely believing her words. "Yes," she said, a smile breaking her usually serious demeanor. "I believe in what you're creating, but it needs to evolve further. We'll need numbers and metrics to support your claims." Relief washed over them as joy bubbled up inside Amelia. They had done it. Against all odds, they presented something meaningful, and now Sarah was interested. As they exited the boardroom, their excitement was palpable. Amelia said, her voice rising with disbelief. Matt laughed, shaking his head in amazement. In the days that followed, their startup launched into a flurry of activity, filled with creativity and energy. They organized workshops, pop-up exhibitions, and community events that connected artists with audiences. Each success solidified their partnership, transforming it from mere collaboration into a friendship. But amid the euphoria, doubts lingered. Matt expressed one evening, his brow furrowed with worry. "Don't think like that," Amelia replied, her tone firm yet understanding. "We've built something special here." Weeks turned into months, and they found themselves hosting events that ignited creativity across their community. But an unexpected crisis was brewing just beneath the surface. One evening, while preparing for an upcoming exhibition, Amelia received a call from Sarah that set her heart racing. "We need to talk," Sarah's tone was urgent. Amelia asked, concern creeping into her voice. "An unexpected issue has arisen with funding." "I'm afraid there's a chance I can't invest after all," Sarah revealed, her words slicing through the excitement Amelia had felt just moments before. Panic surged through Amelia. What did this mean for their startup? Everything they had worked for felt on the verge of collapse. "Let's meet to discuss this further," Sarah suggested. As Amelia hung up, she felt numb. How could this happen? She caught Matt's eye, who stood nearby looking puzzled. He asked, sensing the shift in her expression. "They might not be able to invest," she said, her voice shaking. Matt's face twisted with confusion and fear. "No, that can't happen." "Let's meet with Sarah and figure it out," Amelia proposed, trying to stay calm, but the knot in her stomach tightened. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, their uncertainty hung in the air like heavy fog. They knew they had a meeting with Sarah the following day, and they had no idea what awaited them. Would their dreams come crashing down? Would they lose everything they had fought so hard to build? A sense of urgency filled Amelia's thoughts, and as the evening drew to a close, she realized their journey was far from over. The real test was about to begin, and in that moment she recognized that, despite the fear, they had to dig deep and find the strength to face whatever came next. Tomorrow wasn't just another day, it was the turning point that would define everything.